like it's on now. My name is Lisa Rayner, and we're sitting in my house in Flagstaff, Arizona. And we've been talking about how I came to Flagstaff in the early 90s to attend Northern Arizona University. And I was very interested in permaculture design and attended a permaculture certification course on the Hopi Reservation.
What exactly is permaculture?
Permaculture is a conjunction of the words permanent in culture and permanent in agriculture. And it has to do with turning human gardens and neighborhoods and communities into fully functioning ecosystems. That's the simplest explanation. And I started researching what foods will grow well at 7,000 feet in the middle of a desert. And I learned that cool season leafy greens and root crops and herbs and old world peas and beans and other frost tolerant foods are the easiest to grow. You're gonna have to ask me some questions.
Oh, with pleasure. So what are the particular challenges of this area? You said high altitude. What are the other challenges? And what are the benefits?
Right. Well, the challenges include very strong sunlight, which can damage leafy greens, for example. It can often be very windy, especially in the spring during our dry season. During the summer monsoon season, we have hail. We have the chance of frost throughout our 90-day growing season.
90 days? Boy, you have to act fast.
Well, it actually ranges from under 30 days to about 120 days, depending on which side of the mountain you live on.
Oh, so you have all these microclimates.
Yes, lots of
here.
microclimates, but right here in Flagstaff it's 90 days. And the benefits.
Well, the sun, you said.
Yeah, we have lots of sunlight, so for crops that need lots of sunlight, that's good. For crops that come from climates where it's not as sunny, light shade or partial shade is actually advisable. So you need to understand the climate here, and you need to know the needs of the crops you're growing.
What is the soil like here? Is that a challenge as well?
Yes, the soil here is definitely a challenge. Right here we're on a volcanic area that is several thousand feet thick, and the bedrock is very close to the surface. You're lucky if you have 1 inch of topsoil with 1% organic matter. So composting is very, very important, and one of the things I've been doing the last few years is trying to educate people about how we need to create a local food system, because we lost our food system after World War II when the price supports from the federal government were taken away. And because of the thin soils and the high altitude and the short growing season, farmers here could not compete with the Midwest and Central California, where all of the money was going for industrialized agriculture at that time. So we lost all of our farms just about. Now, where was I?
What were they growing when they were thriving, the farms here?
The farmers here, for several decades, grew potatoes as a commercial crop. I mean, people had kitchen gardens and flocks of chickens, things like that too. But for several decades, we were the potato capital of Arizona, and we were exporting potatoes out of the county. However, farmers were not using crop rotation, and the soil was gradually being depleted of nutrients. And finally, there was a potato blight that came through, and farmers had to stop growing potatoes commercially, and they switched to pinto beans, and then they grew pinto beans for several more decades until after World War II. And our last farmer died about 5 years ago.
Oh my.
And he hung until the very end, and his wife still has the farm. It's out on 89A North. And so anyway, there are lots of people here who are interested in the environment. Flagstaff is known as the Berkeley of Arizona. It's all relative. Believe me, it's all relative. My husband's running for city council right now, and it's interesting because he is the most radical candidate, the most leftist candidate anyway. And there's a subgroup of environmentalists who are very interested in recreating a local food system, and so we are looking into what we need to do that. And the first thing we need to do is compost. You know, my feeling is that we should be composting every scrap of organic matter that is coming into Flagstaff right now, because it might not always be coming in. at the same level it is right now. And the more compost we can create, the more gardens we can create, and the higher our population ultimately will be, a sustainable population level.
So that would include, for example, collecting the garbage from restaurants. When
Right,
I say
right,
garbage,
it would.
I mean the
Right, it would, and it's a
yes.
challenge because anything that's been touched by human hands has to go through a state permitting process. And the city has looked into doing that out at the landfill, into composting restaurant waste, and I think they're looking at too large a scale. The scale I'm looking at is neighborhood composting centers, where people who live in apartments or townhomes or simply don't want the mess or the chore of keeping up their own compost pile to be able to take a walk down the block and use the neighborhood compost pile. And so that's what I do at my sorry, I started stuttering when I did this.
That's fine.
The garden I coordinate is called Juniper Street Community Garden, and we invite people in the neighborhood to bring their food scraps down there.
Fabulous. And I know you're very dedicated yourself in your personal life, day to day, to live in a sustainable way. Can you kind of walk us through a day in your life or a week in your life
Sure.
where you point out the various choices you've made?
Sure. Well, the first thing is my husband and I live in a townhouse, and maybe if we had more money, we'd get a house with a yard, but we wouldn't put it into a large house or fancy things. We actually live very, very simply. You can go over there and see our laundry hanging up because we're not allowed to hang it up outside. We're washing our sheets today. But a typical day
Meaning you don't use a dryer.
Right, yeah, we don't use a dryer, cold water wash. We both work at home, so that makes living sustainably easier. We ride our bicycles and walk everywhere. We do have a pickup truck that we use to haul stuff like manure, but mostly it just sits in our garage, and we use it to drive down to Sedona occasionally to see my parents. And we actually have a car co-op. We let friends and neighbors drive our truck since it's just sitting there. And we've actually looked into trying to start something more formal, but there's no way to get insurance without becoming a corporation. And we already run several home businesses, and so we haven't taken that on yet. So it's pretty casual. But a typical day for us is we don't usually get up very early. And my husband's desk is here, and I have a little tiny desk in the bedroom, and we have 2 bedrooms downstairs that we use as an office for my husband's business, which is selling political bumper stickers and t-shirts. And you may have heard of my husband, actually. He has a t-shirt that has the names of soldiers who were killed in Iraq, and it says "Bush lied, they died." And there are 7 state laws against the t-shirts, and one of those laws was in Arizona, and luckily the ACLU of Arizona sued the state to stop the state from prosecuting him. And
sounds like a lively epic in your life.
Oh, it was. We had a crew from Bill O'Reilly jump us out here. They were waiting for us to come out of the house, and my husband was walking down the block to a friend's house, and they just jump out of the SUV with cameras, start asking him questions, and he didn't say anything. But the clip is still up there if you want to see it. But anyway.
You had mentioned that you're vegan.
Yes.
And do you want to speak a little bit about your choice there?